some time, you can settle in and arrive to this space together however makes sense, whether you have some wiggles to get out or you're ready to lie down on the floor. Just take care of yourself for the next minute or so, 10 more breaths. Okay, so for those of you who I don't know or don't know me, I'm Cassandra. I'm studying for Hope this morning. I've said this before in classes, but lucky for you all, she's taught me everything I know about yin, so I'll do her justice this morning. A couple reminders about yin practice is that this is a space where we explore sitting in some discomfort. Yin is about holding poses for longer periods of time. Maybe today that will mean from 3 to about 5 minutes, maybe a few minutes longer for a few poses. And then moving into that, knowing that we're going to sit in some discomfort is that you are all the keepers of your own bodies and your experience, and only you can know the difference between discomfort and pain, and how much discomfort you choose to invite into your space. So as we hold poses, if you need to come out of them, you have full freedom and space to do that. And please do not invite pain in today. There's no reason to be in pain. So we will get started in a constructive rest. You will find the ground. The bottoms of your feet will find the ground, and your knees can come together in like a self-supporting kind of way. Oftentimes when my knees touch one another, I have to sort of adjust my feet. They might need to widen a bit. And then as we can create that support between our knees, oftentimes we can maybe feel some relaxing or release in the inner thighs. You could even choose to put a block between your knees. We're just going to stay here in this constructive rest. You may choose to place your hands along your body somewhere. Maybe your hands come to or your heart or along your sides. Or maybe you choose to take up lots of space this morning and your hands come up overhead or come out to a T. So I'm going to give everybody about 10 breaths to settle into our constructive rest. If you're interested in the playlist, this would be a good time to get it started. Fit in the email that was sent out this morning. Breathing in through your nose, if that's accessible to you. Placing no judgment or anything really around the breath, allowing the inhales to arrive and the exhales to arrive as well, just as they are. The only cue will be to breathe through your nose if you can. A few more breaths here. Noticing all of the parts of your body supported by the ground, the bottoms of your feet, your bottoms, your lower back, maybe your shoulder blades, maybe a part of your neck, and the back of your head. Maybe sinking into the knowing that the ground can hold you here. I've been reading this book by Glennon Doyle called Untamed, and she talks about be still and know. And I've thought about how annoyingly simple that sounds, but I'd like to read a little excerpt from her book as we lie here in constructive rest for a few more breaths. In the context of be still and know. I'm going to take my own few breaths and I'll get started. I'd read that verse, be still and know, many times before, but it struck me freshly this time. It didn't say poll your friends and know, or read books by experts and know, or scour the internet and know. It suggested a different approach to knowing. Just stop. Stop moving, stop talking, stop searching, stop panicking, stop flailing. If you just stop doing, you'll start knowing. This seemed like magical nonsense, but desperate women take desperate measures. I decided to experiment. After the kids left for school, I shut myself in my closet, sat down on a towel, closed my eyes, and did nothing but breathe. At first, each 10-minute session felt 10 hours long. I checked my phone every few minutes, planned my grocery lists, and mentally redecorated my living room. The only things I seemed to know on that floor were that I was hungry and itchy and suddenly desperate to fold laundry and reorganize my pantry. I was an input junkie thrown into detox. I was tempted to quit every second, but I was stern with myself. 10 minutes a day is not too long to spend finding yourself. For God's sakes, you spend 80 minutes a day to find your keys. After a few weeks, like a gymnast who was able to stretch deeper after each training, I began to feel myself dropping lower during each closet session. Eventually, I sank deep enough to find a new level inside of me that I'd never known existed. This place is underneath, low, deep, quiet, still. There are no voices there, not even my own. All I can hear down there is my breath. It was as though I'd been drowning, and in my panic, I had been gasping for air, calling for rescue and flailing on the surface. But what I really needed to do to save myself was let myself sink. It struck me that this is why we say to people, calm down, because beneath the noise of the pounding, swirling surf is a place where all is quiet and clear. Since the chaos stills in this deep, I could sense something there I was not able to sense on the surface. It was like that silent chamber in Denmark, one of the quietest places in the world where people can actually hear and feel their own blood circulating. There in the deep, I could sense something circulating inside of me. It was a knowing. I can know things down at this level there I can't on the chaotic surface. Down here, when I pose a question about my life in words or abstract images, I sense a nudge. The nudge guides me towards the next precise thing. And then when I silently acknowledge the nudge, it fills me. The knowing feels like warm liquid gold filling my veins and solidifying just enough to make me feel steady, certain. So as we take our practice a little bit deeper, I hope that we can all maybe experience these moments of knowing within us, and maybe not, and we'll continue to practice and find them in other places and ways. So you'll begin to windshield wiper your feet or your legs from side to side. As you do this, Your legs don't have to come all the way to the ground, but maybe they will. And notice your lower back as you windshield wiper from left to right. Breathing in through your nose if you can. A few more rounds, taking the time that you need. And when you're ready, you're going to come to a fetal position on your left. You might place a blanket in between your knees if you'd like some support there. Extending both arms out in front of you, palms touching one another. Just breathing here for a few. If it's accessible to you, maybe your lower hand wraps up and around towards your rib cage, reaching for the ceiling. The rib cage on the top, the right rib cage. Maybe it's your right hand or maybe it's your left, but see if you can place the hand on the rib cage. And again, without judgment or the urge to shift your breath, notice the expansion or maybe the lack of expansion this morning as you inhale. Just making contact with your rib cage. Allowing your breath to be just what it is. A few more cycles just like this. Now extending that arm back out, palms together. This is a practice I haven't done and I'm gonna work on my cues here. So palms are together and on an inhale, the right hand is going to come up and over the body, reaching for the ground on the other side. So it's a twist here. If this is not accessible, you might just bring your arm up overhead. This is a way we can open up the upper and mid back here. If you feel your lower back getting really involved, bring some awareness to the space where your knees meet. You can take a few breaths here in this open twist. And then let a full inhale bring your palms back together when you're ready. A full breath cycle with your palms together. And then once more, an inhale will open you up to that twist. Inhaling through your nose. If you're in that twist, just another breath or two, and then let an inhale bring your palms back together. Slowly and with ease, you can move yourself to a fetal position on the other side. You might roll on your back or move into a child's pose. However you need to get there this morning, fetal position on the right. As you settle in on the right side, your hands making contact with your rib cage now on the left. And it's just a noticing here. It's not about shifting or changing anything, but noticing if your rib cage moves as you inhale. And noticing the rib cage coming back towards your center on an exhale. Palms back together. Let a full inhale bring your top arm over to this other side of your body, twisting open. Bringing some spaciousness to your upper and middle back. Again, if your lower back is really trying to be the leader of this twist, just bring some awareness to the space where the insides of your knees meet. And if twisting open is not where you'd like to go, you can always bring your arm up overhead. Finishing up your breath cycle, you're in, and then let an inhale bring your palms back together. On an inhale, open up once more. Maybe your hand comes close to the ground, maybe it does not. Breathing all the while in through your nose. A few more breaths. When you're ready, palms back together. Taking all the time that you need, we're going to transition into a child's pose from here. Depending on what props you've brought with you today, there's lots of different ways to support yourself here. Your knees might be really wide along your mat. Your knees might be together. You might rest on a bolster or a stack of blankets. Just settling into a child's pose. We're going to stay for about 30 breaths or 3 minutes or so. Be still and know. About halfway there. So to come out of the child's pose, we're going to slide our heart against the mat, coming to find the front body against the ground. Might need to remove props first before you slide your heart against the mat. And then once the front of your body has found the ground, you're going to visit some kind of cobra. It might be like the babyest cobra. It might be a really big expression of a cobra. Tapping in and just coming to visit your expression of cobra for about 10 breaths, 1 minute. Your arms can be tucked alongside your body, palms down on the ground, tops of your feet rooted onto the ground as well. Breathing in through your nose, a few more breaths, out through your mouth or your nose. And releasing. Moving into half frog. So the front body is on the ground. If you have blankets close, you might bring them to close to where your knees might be. But half frog looking like, we'll start with our left foot. The knee come towards the center of the body. We'll create that kind of like 90-degree angle on the inside of our knee, placing some kind of support possibly underneath our knee here. And then the rest of our front body onto the ground. Can you notice your bottom here? Place that we very often tighten and hold tension. And if you have the capacity to release or give in to some of that tension, let your butt cheeks go. We'll be here for 2 minutes, about 2.5 minutes. In through your nose. Honor your transition from one side to the other by doing whatever your body needs. And then half frog on the right side or the other side. Take your time. Be still and know. Finishing up your breath that you're inhaling through your nose and exhaling. And then on your next inhale, extending that leg back. We'll hold Starfish Pose while we're here on our bellies. So all of your limbs becoming like limbs of a starfish, taking up lots of space here, your arms out to a T maybe, or some other kind of pretty starfish shape. We'll just stay here for about 10 breaths. Maybe your forehead's found the ground or one of your cheeks. And speaking of cheeks, thinking about your butt again here, releasing any tension you might be carrying, or even just a little bit of tension you might be carrying. Letting go where and when we can. From here, you're going to bring your arms in closer to the center of your body, and you'll begin to press yourself up until you have arrived at a hero's pose. There's no rush to arrive, but once you land, your knees will possibly come together. You can also use a bolster or a stack of blankets in between your legs to sort of boost yourself up a bit. Either way, we'll come onto heroes, sitting on top of our heels here. Thinking about our vertebrae of our spine stacked neatly on top of one another. The crown of the head reaches for the ceiling or the sky. Sometimes I even sort of pull on my hair to get myself there. A real subtle tuck of your chin. Your hands can come to the tops of your knees, or maybe you create some heat between your palms and bring them to a prayer or an Anjali mudra. Let's commit to hero's pose for about a minute and a half. Your eyes might close here, or a soft gaze towards the ground. Invite your breath to get a bit deeper, but don't judge it if it can't. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling out wherever. Bringing your hands down onto the ground, tucking your toes here, and then coming to sit back down for the counter pose of heroes, the beloved toe crusher. You can count your breaths here if it helps you to stay. Let's try for 10 or 12 breaths. If you've lost count or getting distracted by the discomfort, just stay for a few more cycles if you can. Just practicing that doing hard things for short periods of time. Wrapping up, your hands come down onto the ground, untuck the toes and sort of tap them or beat them onto the ground here. Downward dog. You notice your needs and see if you can meet them. This morning, I definitely need a blanket underneath my heels to bring the ground closer to me. Invite those micro movements in, and then come to find stillness in our downward dog. This might be a good place for a lion's breath or two, or even just sticking your tongue out at the wall behind you. So just one option before we move into the next pose, if you'd like to create a little bit more heat here, you can imagine like a ball starting at your pelvis that wants to roll down the front of your body, coming all the way to the top of your head,
landing you in a plank pose. If this is not where you want to go this morning, just hold your downward dog for a few more breaths. Otherwise, creating some heat if you'd like, plank pose for just a few. And then let that ball roll from the top of your head, down the front of your body, back to your pelvic region, downward dog. Coming down onto all fours now. When you land on all fours, just look up for just a moment if you can. We're gonna move into a square pose, but I'd like to offer it also lying down. So if you, okay, let's go there first. So we'll move the right knee in front of the left. So we'll cross that right leg over the left. Now both of our knees are stacked in front of each other, the right knee in front of the left. And then we're gonna extend that left leg out wide and come to find a seat, right? Both of our knees stacked on top of one another. Like if you hate this or it's not something that feels accessible to you this morning, you could practice this pose lying on your back. Just be keeping the knees stacked. You could even find a wall if there's a wall close by to put your feet against. Otherwise, just kind of allowing your feet to float. If not, if you're down for the seated, knees stacked, feet come as wide as you feel good doing. Those same cues for hero's pose, thinking about all of your vertebrae stacked neatly on top of one another. Crown of the head reaching for the ceiling. And that sort of subtle tuck of the chin. So I'm going to offer a weird cue that no one is obligated to do, but for some reason, well, for me, my hips and my jaw are very interconnected. And so oftentimes when I'm experiencing discomfort and want to run out of this pose, I bring my fingers to my earlobes and kind of just pull down and out. I have no idea why it helps me stay, but it does. Don't hold your breath. Okay, before we move out, there's a few ways to come out of this pose. You can extend your legs in front of you and do a little bit of shaking if you're feeling super, I don't know what, like a break dancer. I feel like that's the hope. The first cue you said was like a break dancer. Then your hands will come to your left. You'll press down into your feet and begin to untwist yourself. Forward fold. And if you're not breakdancing this morning, then you can just extend those arms or legs in front of you and kind of shake them out. For the break dancers, you'll just keep twisting them. And your left knee will arrive on top of your right. And otherwise, back to all fours. Bring the left leg in front of the right. Stack the knees. Extend that right leg out wide and then come to sit down. And holy wow, how one side feels so different than the other.
Be still and know. Don't forget to breathe. Almost there. Okay, so for the break dancers in the room, you know what to do. Hands to the right, begin to twist yourself into a wide-legged forward fold. Otherwise, legs can extend out in front of you. Do a nice big shake. So taking a minute to yourself before we get into final resting pose. If you need to stand, if you need to dance, if you need to give yourself extra time to settle into Shavasana, do any and all of the things that you need and take your time doing them. See lots of forward folds and ragdolls, which look lovely. I'm gonna join for that. Once you've taken care, settling into your final resting pose, whatever that should look like this morning for you. All the props or none of the props. On your belly, on your back. So special to watch everybody settle in. As you settle in, I'm gonna continue a little bit of this excerpt from the book from earlier. So the last thing that she had talked about was this liquid gold filling her veins and solidifying just enough to steady and certain. What I learned, even though I am afraid to say it, is that God lives in this deepness inside me. When I recognize God's presence and guidance, God celebrates by flooding me with warm, liquid gold. Every day, I returned to the closet, sat down on the floor, littered with t-shirts and jeans, and I practiced sinking. The knowing would meet me in the deep and nudge me toward the next right thing, one thing at a time. That was how I began to know what to do next. That was how I began to walk through my life more clearly, solid, and steady. I now take orders only from my own knowing, whether I'm presented with a work, personal, or family decision, a monumental or tiny decision. Whenever uncertainty rises, I sink. I sink beneath the swirling surf of words, fears, expectations, conditioning, and advice, and feel for the knowing. I sink 100 times a day. I have to, because the knowing never reveals a 5-year plan. It feels to me like a loving, playful guide. Like the reason it will only reveal the next right thing is that it wants me to come back again and again, because it wants to do life together. After many years, I'm developing a relationship with this knowing. We are learning to trust each other. I have learned that if I want to rise, I have to sink first. I have to search for and depend upon the voice of inner wisdom instead of voices of outer approval. This saves me from living someone else's life. It also saves me a hell of a lot of time and energy. I just do the next thing the knowing guides me toward, one thing at a time. I don't ask permission first, which is just such a grown-up way to live. The best part is this: the knowing is beyond and beneath language. So I have no language to use to translate it to anyone. Since it doesn't use words to explain itself to me, I quit using words to explain myself to the world. This is the most revolutionary thing a woman can do. The next precise thing, one thing at a time, without asking permission or offering explanation.
It's a few minutes after 10. I'd like to offer to hold space to anyone for stillness for the next 5 or 10 minutes. But if there are those of you that have other obligations, you're welcome to move out of your Shavasana and wrap up your practice.